17th. All 80 people on board were evacuated. The CRJ 900 departed Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada, this is Lindsay aside, this is the NTSB of Canada, will be in charge of the investigation and will provide any updates. They're not providing any passenger crew names or medical conditions at this time, but we did hear from Peel Regional Paramedic Services. They confirmed to CBS News 15 patients were transported to the hospital. 2 were transported via air ambulance, 1 to a children's hospital. All injuries are non-life-threatening. All crew and passengers are accounted for. Injuries are minor to moderate. That is the good news here of something that is happening that looks like it was very harrowing to go through, very terrifying. This is more video coming into our newsroom, and it appears to be shaky, but it looks like it's pointing at one of the engines, and we can see black streaks along the side of that plane there. And we can also see that the area is blanketed in drifts of snow. And so we know that, according to one of our CBS weather producers, the weather conditions at the time, there was blowing snow, 17 degrees Fahrenheit. Visibility was down to 6 miles, and the winds were 20 miles an hour with gusts up to 37 miles an hour. But she notes that typically wind gusts aren't a huge issue for landing until they're over 40 miles an hour. As we continue to watch this video coming in, some of it I'm watching, seeing for the first time along with you. But we can see those emergency vehicles there that are on site. We see what looks like to be at least maybe 2 fire trucks and then a police vehicle there toward where the tail of the plane should be. 80 people on board, again, to reiterate, all people safely evacuated, 15 patients transported to the hospital, all non-life-threatening injuries ranging from minor to moderate. Delta released a statement saying they're aware of reports of Endeavour Flight 4819 operating from Minneapolis-St. Paul to Toronto Pearson International Airport was involved in an accident. We're working to confirm any details, and we'll share the most current information on their website as it becomes available. And we also know that one of the flight attendants' unions, the AFA-CWA, posted on X confirming that its crew was working on the flight and that they are working to gather information and support all of those involved. Clearly, this is a time when there's a lot of attention right now on aviation. Just a couple of weeks ago, not even a month ago, we saw that horrific crash that happened between the Black Hawk helicopter and a passenger jet over the Potomac River outside of D.C., killing all 67 people on board. Here, a much better outcome, although these images are just incredible to see of a regional jet flipped upside down, but all 80 people here accounted for, evacuated safely, injuries non-life-threatening, ranging from mild to moderate. And we know that the Canadian version of the NTSB will be taking the lead on this. The NTSB is aware and will be working and will be invited to join as well. But we know that obviously the investigation has yet to even begin here. And again, I'm just getting another weather update here, reiterating just what I had told you, that the winds were gusting over 40 miles an hour. I had previously told you 37 miles an hour, that there was light snow falling. And the wind direction was due west, which is a crosswind. So we're still gathering some more information here on everything that happened. But certainly, again, like I said, a lot of attention right now on aviation as Americans and people really around the world are watching another incident that we have here just weeks after that tragedy that took place near our nation's capital, this time on what should have been a 1-hour, 50-minute flight from Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport to Toronto Pearson. Just looking at some of this video again that we've been showing you and cycling through, you can see just those black streaks there on the side of the plane and that engine. Certainly incredible that all 80 people were able to be safely evacuated and that the injuries are not life-threatening. Certainly the best case scenario that we could go to. I want to go ahead and bring in former NTSB Vice Chairman Bruce Landsberg. Bruce, thank you for being here. And I know that there's so little that we know, but from the images that you're seeing and what we have learned, is there anything that's going through your mind here about what could have led to something like this?
Well, thank you very much. First, anything that I say here is obviously preliminary, and as the investigative team gets into it, and Transport Canada and the National Transportation Safety Board, they will all be looking very closely, and it'll take them several weeks in order to at least get a preliminary report out. But obviously, I think the wind is quite possibly a factor. We're dealing with obviously snow and ice on the runway. And if there was a landing gear, either malfunction or damage to the gear as a result of a hard landing, this can all cause the aircraft to go out of control. And as you've already pointed out, it is remarkable, given the circumstances, that everyone got out, some with some injuries. And I guess it's also remarkable that nobody decided to take their luggage.
I'll ask you a little bit more about that, but I'm getting another statement in, again, from Peel Regional Paramedic Services, that out of the 15 injuries, 1 child and 2 adults are critically injured. The rest are minor to moderate. So again, this is a fast developing situation. But from your understanding, how are we to understand critically injured in terms of the severity of an injury that might take place, Bruce, in something like this?
Well, obviously, the injuries are going to occur in different parts of the aircraft and where they happen to be sitting. It also could very much be a function, if we're talking about an infant. NTSB has been after the FAA for probably 2 decades now, at least, to say that infants have their own seat belt and are buckled in, and car seats are preferable for that. And if the infant was not buckled, the G-forces in a crash, even in a relatively slow speed crash, will be significant. And if the adults were not firmly buckled in their seat belts, which they should have been for takeoff and landing, that could certainly lead to them becoming injured.
It is difficult to think about. We're obviously hoping for the best for the people who are injured. I want to ask you about the weather conditions, winds gusting over 40 miles an hour. How much of a problem would that be? And also winds due west, which is a crosswind.
Well, as a pilot myself, one of the most challenging activities that a pilot can undertake is dealing with crosswinds, because the aircraft wants to weather vane into the wind or turn into the wind because of the tail. And so the pilot has to counteract that by pushing simultaneously on both the rudder pedals to keep the airplane going straight, and then putting a wing down in order to keep it from drifting off the runway. So it requires a very delicate balance. And the greater the side component on the wind, the more challenging it's going to be. And of course, the wind isn't steady, it's going to be gusting. So just about the time you think you've got everything squared away, another gust comes along or the gust stops. So the pilot is constantly fighting to keep the aircraft properly aligned. And in airline aircraft, typically they will come down in a crab relative to the runway and then straighten the aircraft out and roll into a cross-control situation. I realize that's getting pretty technical now, but a lot of things are happening very, very quickly. And if it isn't worked out in terms of timing, or there's a gust at exactly the wrong time, or a downdraft that dumps the airplane onto the pavement, that could potentially cause the landing gear to fail, in which case now you start to have a crash scenario develop very, very quickly.
Can you help me understand how we might be in a situation where the wings and the tail are ripped off?
Well, I don't think the wind ripped the tail off. I think that was a result of the aircraft flipping upside down.
Okay.
And so it appears, just based on what I can see from the picture here, that the wings were basically ripped off the aircraft, which is what allowed it to flip upside down. The investigation itself will determine the crash sequence. Obviously, we'll have a cockpit voice recorder and a flight data recorder. And since this is a relatively new aircraft, there will be a lot of parameters on that, which will allow them to see exactly the control inputs, what the pilot was doing. They'll also, with GPS equipment, be able to ascertain the winds. And of course, they've got wind recording information there at the airport. So there's going to be a lot of data to pick off here and then go back and reconstruct specifically what happened. And you can see here with the picture, right over the center part of the aircraft, or actually a little bit aft of it, is where the wings actually were ripped off, which allowed the aircraft to flip upside down.
If we can show that video that we were just playing, what is being sprayed on top of the aircraft?
That's going to be some kind of, it could be water, or it could be some chemical to ensure that obviously you're putting out the fire. And it's quite clear that it's not a widespread fire because the fuselage is basically intact and uncharred. There's a little bit what appears to be some smoke damage or something right on the underside just ahead of the wings. And they are spraying, obviously, a lot of retardant on there to make sure that things cool down appropriately so they can get in and check things out.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was something to keep things from becoming flammable again, or some sort of de-icing mixture, but it makes sense that it would be to put out whatever kind of fire might currently be blowing. And for those of you, my eyes sometimes veer off because I have a larger monitor where I can see these live images a little bit better. Bruce, I know that we're relying on you for a lot of information. I'm going to keep going with you if that is okay. Right now, I'm sure a lot of people are going to be looking at this. I mean, the images are just extraordinary. We're hoping that everybody pulls through, obviously, in the news that we have, that it sounds like, at least, let me just go back to it and read it verbatim, that one child and 2 adults are critically injured. The rest of the injuries are minor to moderate. Do you have a message for people who are wondering right now the landscape of aviation safety?
I think that's a normal question for people to have. We've had an awful lot of unpleasant exposure. The worst and most prevalent crash was obviously the one at Washington Reagan National between the helicopter and the American Airlines aircraft. All of these crashes do not seem to have anything in common, but we have a series of events that occur. We lost a medevac aircraft in Philadelphia. That one is probably going to be the most difficult to ascertain what transpired. But flying is, without question, the safest mode of transportation. To put this into perspective, and I'll do just a little editorializing here, we've had several major crashes, 67 people lost in the DCA crash. We're killing over 100 people a day on the U.S. highways. That's the equivalent of 3 to 5 airliners a week. And so if you're concerned about safety, driving your car is far more dangerous than it is to go on the airlines. That said, the role of NTSB and of course, the airlines and anybody who flies aircraft, which I do myself, we take safety very seriously. And there's always something to be learned from these events.
What can you tell us about the Transportation Safety Board of Canada, how they operate and how involved the NTSB will be?
Great question. So the Transportation Safety Board has pretty much the identical role that NTSB does here in the United States. And almost all countries are a member of what's called ICAO, the International Congress of Aviation Organizations. And it will, that kind of governs the rules internationally on how airlines and various governmental agencies interact. So NTSB is what's known as an accredited representative in a case like this. So the Transportation Safety Board in Canada will be leading the investigation. They're managing it. But NTSB will be an authorized or an accredited representative. And we will have a team going up there. The GO team is just in the process of getting organized now, and they'll go up there and they will participate with TSB in going through the wreckage and gathering information, and then we'll provide our expertise and we'll share knowledge and so on. It's not quite like being a party. So Delta Airlines will be a party to this. Obviously, the Canadian ATC people will be parties. NTSB will have a little more to say as an accredited representative because we can weigh in with comments in the final report, whereas some of the parties, that's a bit more challenging.
For anybody who is just joining us, let's catch you up to speed. Bruce, stand by if you can. But this was Flight 4819 out of Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport, taking off around 11:30 local time, Central Time, going to Toronto Pearson International Airport, which is about a 1 hour, 50-minute flight. This crash landing happened at around 2:45 p.m. local time, which is Eastern time. And as you can see here, the plane appeared to have finally landed upside down there with its landing gear up toward the sky. This is video taken from somebody who said that they were on the plane at the time of the crash. And we can see there officials spraying what could be some kind of flame retardant to keep any kind of flames at bay. But we see the wings and the tail are no longer on the CRJ 900 regional. And we know that the weather conditions were gusts more than 40 miles an hour. Obviously, this area, as you can see from this video, has gotten a lot of snow lately. Delta has tweeted that they are aware of this happening, and we have heard from Peel Regional Paramedic Services that 15 patients were transported to the hospital, and 1 child and 2 adults are critically injured. The rest are minor to moderate, according to Peel Regional Paramedic Services. And so right now, we are lucky enough to be talking to Bruce Landsberg, who's a former vice chairman of the NTSB, about the investigation, what happens from here. So, Bruce, if you were on the investigating body, what would be some of the questions that you would be asking and some of the material that you would want to be amassing in order to get to the bottom of what happened?
Well, I think always in all the investigations, NTSB will send up a multidisciplinary team. So you'll have people from operations, you'll have air traffic control, you'll have structures and engineering people, you'll have recorder people, and they may not all be on site, but they will gather all of this information. Meteorology, I think, is quite possibly going to play a significant part in this. As you noted, the wind gusts were over 40 miles an hour, and if it's not pretty much down the runway, and even if it is down the runway, that's going to introduce the possibility of some element of wind shear. And this is a different kind of wind shear than what we have related to thunderstorms, but rapid changes in wind direction and speed. And that makes it extremely challenging for the pilots to put the aircraft on the ground. And they have parameters in which they operate. And if it's too much, then they have to divert to a different runway or perhaps even a different airport. So all of that is going to be looked at in the context of the weather and the runway condition. Obviously, it's cold up there. You've got ice and snow, which compounds the ability to stay on the runway. And once the aircraft either touches down exceptionally hard or with a great side load, and what that means is that the wind has become so strong or the aircraft is not correcting for the wind, it puts a side loading on the landing gear. Now, the landing gear, the main landing gear is very, very tough, but there's a limit as to how much it can take, and the wheels are designed to roll in one direction. And if you try to make them go sideways, once it exceeds a certain load, that's not going to work very well. So these are all the kinds of things that the both TSB and the NTSB are going to be looking at. They'll obviously be looking at the pilots and their qualifications and listening to the cockpit voice recorders. So there's a lot of information here. It's going to take a while to kind of sort through it all, but I think the teams will get to the bottom of it. And as far as the passengers are concerned, one of the things we'll look at is the survival aspects. And this is going to be a very data-rich environment in which to do that, because you're going to have the passengers and every one of them is a witness. The ones who are seriously injured or critically injured, they're going to take a look at that and say, well, gee, where were they sitting and were their seatbelts properly buckled and what happened? If you happen to be sitting right on top of the wing, which is where it appears the wing was ripped off in the process of the landing, which is what allowed the fuselage to roll over, that might not be the best place in this particular scenario. So there's just an awful lot of information to go through, and we don't have much of that at this point.
And so keeping that in mind, Bruce, knowing that we don't know exactly what happened in the chain of events, can you walk us through what the evacuation process would look like and how that would be carried out, given that the plane does appear to have come to a final rest upside down?
Well, what happens is we all have heard the briefings every time we got on the airplanes, and they tell you, identify where the nearest exits are, keeping in mind that some of them may be behind you, and that's always a very good idea. And then also they have passengers seated in the over the wing exits who theoretically are capable of operating those exits in the event of an emergency. In this airplane, it doesn't look like they have any rear exits because of the engines being there. But what typically will happen is, as the crash scenario unfolds, once the airplane comes to a complete stop, the crew is if they're still functional, will be giving directions. Oftentimes they have bullhorns that they use, and they'll be giving directions to the passengers. The flight attendants are typically positioned in front of the main exits, so they will go ahead and open those doors if they are openable. Several things that we're told to look at when we're prior to opening a door is there fire over there, or is there a lot of jagged metal or something like that, which will not make that a good exit. And the requirements are that everybody has to be off the aircraft with only half the exits functional within 90 seconds. So that's a pretty stringent requirement. Again, that's one of the things that the investigative team will look at, was how long did it take for them to evacuate, even with the injured.
When I had originally spoken to you a few minutes ago, you had remarked that it was interesting to you that the passengers had the wherewithal to not go for their luggage. Why did that stand out to you?
Well, that seems to be a problem, or has been a problem, in a number of previous events where passengers will take their luggage. Well, obviously, that slows down the exit process considerably. You see it in reverse when you're getting on board the airplane. If people just went and got in their seats and sat down, as opposed to loading their luggage into the overhead or under their seat, the loading time would take a lot less. Well, conversely, When you have a critical situation and you need to get off the airplane quickly, the luggage is going to slow things down. I think one of the factors, and obviously it's too soon to say, but one of the factors is the fact that the aircraft was upside down creates a circumstance where it's going to be a little harder to take their luggage. And I think people were more focused on when they unbuckle their seatbelt, gravity is going to take effect. And you have to be a little careful so that when you unbuckle your seatbelt, you don't fall to the ground. So that's all of the kinds of factors that come into this. And I suspect that'll be the source of some of the more minor or moderate injuries.
And Bruce, while we were talking, we did get a confirmation from the Transportation Safety Board of Canada. They did confirm that they are deploying a team to investigate the aircraft incident at Toronto. The TSB will gather information and assess the occurrence. Bruce, I had already asked you this, but in case there's anybody who's just joining us, how big of a role will the NTSB play, given that this was a flight that originated from Minneapolis-St. Paul?
Well, NTSB, as I mentioned earlier, will be a accredited representative to the TSB's investigation. So the Transportation Safety Board of Canada will be the lead investigation. They'll manage all of it. NTSB will function similar to, but not identical to, a party in the investigation, which will include Delta. It'll include NAV Canada, which operates their air traffic control system, and NTSB will assist in gathering information and providing expertise to the investigation, and will also have the opportunity to weigh in with opinions and their take on what transpired. So they will play a supporting role in this particular case.
Bruce, stay with us if you can. I want to bring in Captain Laura Einsettler, a commercial airline pilot with more than 30 years of flying experience. Captain Einsettler, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Just from what we've seen, the limited information that we have, the limited images that we have from Toronto Pearson, what are your thoughts?
It's an unfortunate tragedy, but the great news is that everyone was able to mostly walk away from the situation.
And from what we know from Peel Regional Paramedic Services, that 15 patients were transported. We know 1 child and 2 adults are critical. Everybody else has minor to moderate injuries. What does that tell you about impact?
It goes to show that how well these jets are actually built, that they can withstand this type of situation and still have the cabin, the fuselage in this case, completely intact. So it goes to show again how just the combination of the design, the manufacturer, the FAA regulation, and our training, how people can survive a situation like this.
And when we know from one of our CBS News weather producers that there was blowing snow, 17 degrees Fahrenheit, visibility to 6 miles, winds 20 miles an hour with gusts up to 37 miles an hour. Do any of those conditions lead you? We know the weather is going to be something that they will potentially look at. We're not going to get ahead of any causes or potential factors here. But, as a pilot with flying experience, are any of those conditions problematic to you or that you would need to take extra care in?
Yes, having flown into Toronto many times in the February months myself, it is challenging because of the weather conditions. So they're going to be looking at things like the wind gusts, any type of wind shear that might have happened, possible wake turbulence of maybe a jet ahead of them, also the icing conditions of the runway and the icing conditions on the jet itself.
I'm going to ask you the same question that I put to Bruce earlier, but given probably the heightened sensitivity of so many Americans right now in terms of getting on a plane, given the tragedy that happened at the end of last month near our nation's capital, what message do you have? I mean, obviously it's unsettling. That is all very understandable. But do you still have faith in our aviation system, and would you still not only pilot but but go on a plane and have unlimited air travel if that was at your discretion without fear or worry?
Absolutely. In the aviation industry, we always have the bar set as high as we possibly can. Passenger safety is our #1 priority. It is the industry product. We're constantly evolving and changing to make those directives, make those changes that can keep that bar really high. We have 90,000 flights that go out around the world safely every day. And so I tell passengers that this is by far the most safest mode of travel.
If somebody is watching that's going on a plane tonight, tomorrow, in the next few days, is there any advice that you would give them?
I want to tell everyone that we put our lives on the line. We're at the tip of the spear every day. And so they can be assured that we're highly trained, highly experienced pilots. We are experienced in so many things to be able to handle most all situations that come our way. And that's what we're there for, to keep them safe.
Do you have questions, though, about anything that might need to be done or anything that might need to be looked at in the wake of 2 very high-profile aviation incidents, disasters in less than a month? And then on top of that, we had the private medical plane that went down in Pennsylvania as well, that took place a couple of days after the Black Hawk helicopter and passenger jet collision.
Yes, it's very important that we keep those requirements and those levels as high as we can. This was something that was being challenged with the government post-pandemic to see if they would actually release and reduce some of the experience requirements for the different levels. And these are things that the unions, the airlines, everyone, all of us as pilots have said, no, absolutely, we have to keep those levels of experience, ratings, certifications as high as they are, so that we can command the best in training and experience. And we need to just continue to evolve that so that we don't have situations like these.
Any final thoughts, Captain?
That just come flying with us. We'll take you where you want to go safely from point A to point B, and please don't be concerned. Be as ready as you can yourself, physically, emotionally, and ready to fly.
Okay, Captain Laura Einsetler, thank you for your time. And for anyone who is just joining us, I'm back here. We have Bruce with us as well, but I do want to recap for everybody everything that we know here about Flight 4819, which appears to have flipped over, originating from Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport, headed to Toronto Pearson International Airport, which should be a 2-hour flight, and that plane landing there upside down with its wings and its tail no longer intact. We know the Canadian version of the NTSB, the Transportation Safety Board, will be taking the lead on this, and we know that 15 people of the 80 people on board were transported to the hospital. 1 child and 2 adults are in critical condition. All of the other injuries range from minor to moderate, but all 80 passengers were safely evacuated. Delta has responded saying they are aware and they're working to confirm details. Let's go ahead and bring back in former NTSB Vice Chair Bruce Landsberg. And just, Bruce, in the last few minutes since we've been talking to you, any other reactions that you want to share with us?
I think the biggest thing that comes out of all of this is when they tell you to keep your seatbelt on, please do.
Yeah.
I think that will prove to be that's one of the reasons why you had so few injuries. And as Captain Laura pointed out, the aircraft are designed for at least some element of crashworthiness. And this particular case shows that. There was significant damage to the aircraft, yet the fuselage stayed intact. And from what we could see from the video, we have at least 3 exits open. And as I mentioned earlier, the requirements are that half the exits must be unusable, and the entire population on board the aircraft must be able to get out of the airplane in less than 90 seconds. So it's a tribute to the construction and strength of the aircraft and to the requirements to go through it. And FAA does do some testing on this regularly to see how it works. I've actually been in their simulator down in Oklahoma City, and they induce a fog, if you will, so that you can't see what's going on. And the device is capable of being tilted. It's a simulator in various angles, and they have about 60 or 80 seats on board. And so people have to kind of scramble to get out. So I think there's going to be a lot to learn out of this particular crash, because everything is generally pretty well preserved. And so let's take it for the learning opportunity that it is. I think for the unfortunate, tragic circumstance of the child being injured, I would be very interested to know if the child was in a car seat, as NTSB has recommended, or that they were just being held in somebody's lap, in which case there's very little protection, even in a minor crash with something like that.
Okay, certainly a lot more to figure out, and we're hoping that those people who are critically injured do pull out of this and recover quickly. Bruce, thank you so much. Bruce Landsberg, former vice chair of the NTSB, thank you for your time and your expertise. We do want to take you now to CBS News Minnesota's live coverage of this story.
Caused this. We do know that weather conditions there were cold and were windy. We know that at the time of the crash, it was about 17 degrees and very windy, gusts up to 37 miles per hour. And earlier shortly after this incident happened, we know that some flights from Minneapolis to Toronto were canceled. We did just get an update from David Schuman, who is at the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, checking in on conditions there and what is happening. He just sent me this report. Take a look.
Maria, we just arrived at MSP Airport, and immediately we came to the departures board. We wanted to see what other flights are going to Toronto tonight, and you can see up there 2 flights have been canceled, one with Air Canada and one with Korean Air / WestJet. Now, when we first arrived, that Delta flight in the middle wasn't there, but it looks like Delta has added a flight at 7 o'clock tonight, just before 7 o'clock, that appears to be on time. And you also have 2 flights scheduled to come into MSP from Toronto today. One from Delta, supposed to land in the 4 o'clock hour. That has been canceled, according to the board. There's a second flight coming in that was delayed by about 2 hours. So we're here at the airport. We've reached out to a spokesperson with the airport, haven't heard back. Delta is referring us to their website for all updates. We're working to find people that are maybe leaving for Toronto, because you can imagine that you might have a family member of someone who was on board who might want to get to Toronto tonight, and now it looks like there is a flight for them on Delta. And we're also going to be hopefully speaking with passengers coming in from Toronto about what they saw, if they know of anything about what happened. So we will keep you updated through all of our newscasts. For now, David Schuman with WCCO News at MSP Airport.
All right, David, thank you so much. He will have a live report from the airport coming up in our news at 4 o'clock. That's in just 11 minutes. But right now we got an update from the former NTSB Vice Chairman, Bruce Landsberg. He just gave this update to CBS News on the crash. So check this out.
Always in all the investigations, NTSB will send up a multidisciplinary team. So you'll have people from operations, you'll have air traffic control, you'll have structures and engineering people, you'll have recorder people, and they may not all be on site, but they will gather all of this information. Meteorology, I think, is quite possibly going to play a significant part in this. As you noted, the wind gusts were over 40 miles an hour. And if it's not pretty much down the runway. And even if it is down the runway, that's going to introduce the possibility of some element of wind shear. And this is a different kind of wind shear than what we have related to thunderstorms, but rapid changes in wind direction and speed. And that makes it extremely challenging for the pilots to put the aircraft on the ground. And they have parameters in which they operate. And if it's too much, then they have to divert to a different runway or perhaps even a different airport.
Now, that was the former vice chairman of the NTSB, but we just got a statement from the NTSB. They say, quote, they're leading a team of U.S. investigators to assist the Transportation Safety Board of Canada with their investigation of today's accident at the Delta Airlines Bombardier CRJ900 at Toronto Pearson International Airport. Per international protocols under the International Civil Aviation Organization's Annex 13, any information about the investigation will be released by the Transportation Safety Board of Canada. Here, now let's look live again out at the Toronto Pearson International Airport. Not exactly sure what we are looking at. Let's make this larger here. Emergency vehicle right now in this kind of buildup of traffic. We are looking right outside of the airport right now. We've got, okay, police here, photographers.
They're trying to get them off the snowbank.
Oh, they're trying to get photographers off of the snowbank. That's what's happening here. Okay. I mean, this is gaining, understandably, international attention. This is just, you know, weeks after the deadly mid-air collision between an American Airlines plane and an Army Black Hawk helicopter at the Reagan International Airport in D.C., and everyone on both aircrafts there perished, 67 people. And then just 2 days later, a Lear medical jet crashed into a Philadelphia neighborhood, killing all 6 passengers and 1 person who was on the ground. Very, very thankfully.
We have been listening to our CBS station in Minneapolis on continuing coverage on this. Of course, the flight that we're tracking that landed upside down in Toronto originated from Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport this morning around 11:30 a.m. Central Local Time. Joining us right now is CBS News producer Ahmad Mukhtar. He is at Pearson International Airport in Toronto. Ahmad, thank you for being with us. What are you seeing? What can you tell us?
Hi. At the moment, the police, they are going to have a press conference. We're just heading to the press conference. We're on our way. We still don't know. We are waiting for that press conference.
And Toronto is on a ground stop, right? What can you tell us about that?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question? As I'm on the left, heading to the press conference.
Sure, yes, of course. You're following breaking news, and so that includes going into elevators and maybe losing my question. But what can you tell us about the ground stop currently underway at Toronto Airport?
At this moment, emergency crews are responding to the incident. What we know is about 15 patients have been transferred to a hospital, including 1 child, and 2 adults who have been said to be in critical conditions. The ambulance, the paramedics are all on the way.
Ahmad, before we let you go, if you can still hear me, what questions will you be asking at the press conference?
We are going to ask him what exactly happened, because over the weekend, for the past 2-3 days, we had a very severe thunderstorm, snowstorm here in Toronto, and also icy roads, probably. We still don't know what caused the issue. The main question is to ask the authorities what happened.
Okay, Ahmad Mukhtar, thank you so much. You're on your way to that press conference there in Toronto. Please keep us posted. Everybody, we also have an updated statement from Delta saying that initial reports were there are no fatalities. Several customers with injuries were transported to area hospitals. We know that CBS News has confirmed 1 child and 2 adults are critical. Delta also confirming the flight was carrying a total of 80 people, 76 passengers, and 4 crew. We also know that this was a regional jet, and they included in their statement that Endeavor Air is a subsidiary owned by Delta Airlines. We are going to continue to follow all of this news. America Decides is next. You're watching CBS News 24/7.
Is there no room for debate on college campuses anymore? 60 Minutes brings you to the new university that is demanding it.
The stakes are that high.
If our universities are screwed up, and I believe they are, then that will screw up America as a whole quite quickly.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
I think I asked direct questions. I don't know that they're tough questions per se. What price should Moscow pay for trying to manipulate American voters? Isn't that giving people false hope? That's the role of Face the Nation, to focus on the issues at hand. And that means a civil conversation with perspective.
It was almost like being face to face with the devil.
Women riding bicycles dismembered.
She just vanished.
48 hours reports. I fought and fought.
911, what is your emergency?
She disappeared off the face of the earth.
Ever think in your wildest dreams someone might want to kill you?
This almost became a game of psychological warfare.
You're caught. You're gonna go down.
Stream 48 hours, 24/7.
I think we're very cute.
Yeah, I think we need to send out a Christmas card like this.
Yeah, let's do that.
Dollar Jill.
If you can't get into the market, it's okay. Renting is fine.
I wonder how Serena is feeling. That's a really good question. No one's asked me that yet.
You're 70 years old? 70, yeah.
I'm 21.
We'll see you 7 o'clock sharp.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
Somebody wants the bag. How do they get the bag?
It's a name that's synonymous with luxury. 60 Minutes goes inside the House of Hermes to hear the history and meet the people who craft elegance one stitch at a time. It's time for 60 Minutes.
Well, let me start with this.
This really happened.
Have you told the government?
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
You want me to just
What's
keep
wrong
going?
with that argument?
What have you
Do
learned?
you know why?
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 It's time for 60 Minutes. Sunday on CBS.
Let's do it!
Let's go! Let's do this! I can see clearly now that the rain is gone. Superstar approaching, superstar approaching.
Just get your popcorn and get ready.
Come on, Julia. Oh, no. I will if you will. You go, gal. Yeah, boy!
Dollar Jill.
If you can't get into the market, it's okay. Renting is fine.
Box, oh, it's bad. Screw cap, oh, it's bad. It's not true.
We are making a wonderful lemony chicken.
Ooh, it's hot. That's good.
I wonder what Serena's doing. I wonder how Serena is feeling. That's a really good question. No one's asked me that yet.
You're 70 years old? 70, yeah.
I'm 21.
We'll see you 7 o'clock sharp.
Politics isn't a game. The data says you do have a women problem. Politics is about policy. Isn't that giving people false hope? I'm a voracious consumer of information, and I'm impatient. I don't like to be spun. To be moderator of Face the Nation is not an anchor, it's not an actress. You are up here to moderate a conversation. That means bringing the most powerful stakeholders to the table to become better informed.
Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett coming to you from New York City. We start tonight with breaking news. One child and 2 adults have been critically injured. That's what authorities say after a Delta flight from Minneapolis flipped upside down at Toronto's Pearson Airport. As you can see, the runway is covered with snow, and there were wind gusts, crosswind gusts of up to 40 miles per hour at the time of this crash. 14 people in all, authorities tell us, were transported to area hospitals. I want to bring in commercial airline pilot Laura Einsettler. I hope that I've got that right, Laura, for your assessment of what we've seen. And as people look at these astonishing pictures of a commercial airliner upside down on a snowy runway, your initial thoughts.
We're in Toronto.
But the situation is very tragic, of course. The great part about this in the sense that the cabin is mostly intact, but we will have to determine exactly what it is that happened and why this happened.
And as you look at it, it is a tragic situation. The initial reports seem to be much more positive than our deepest fears would have reasonably led us to suspect, looking at a commercial airliner upside down. That has to be testament to the crew.
They're going to be looking at different factors that are involved in this, such as the gusty wind conditions. It is very challenging, especially in February, to be operating in and out of Toronto. The airport does an excellent job in maintaining typically clear runways for us as we're landing and taking off in and out of there. They're going to be looking at things like wind gusts, wind shear, possible wake turbulence situations, what the crew was experiencing, and take the details from there with the NTSB, the CAA, and the FAA.
And Laura, to my untrained eye, it is something that I'm assuming on approach, something happened with the wind that was of such significant turbulence that it turned the plane upside down. That's just my uneducated look at the video, wondering what might have happened. Does that seem like a plausible scenario to you?
It depends on the variables of the circumstances. So how strong were the wind gusts, the capabilities, of course, of the aircraft and the crew, their experience. Were there any larger jets possibly preceding this to kick off any wake turbulence in addition to gusty winds? What were the runway conditions, things of that nature.
And Laura, you have alluded to this, but I want to ask you for your expertise. What are the challenges on approach? Crosswinds, you mentioned wind shear. That's a term that some of our viewers might be familiar with, even though they're not experienced pilots or know a lot about avionics. What are some of the challenges on approach in the wintertime if there are heavy crosswinds?
Well, in the wintertime, things that we're obviously paying very close attention to, what the visibilities are, is there blowing snow, what type of snow, how it's affecting the aircraft itself, our actual systems of our aircraft, de-icing capabilities, the wind capabilities of the aircraft. If it's lower visibility type conditions, can we do an auto land, or is this a manual land? Those are things that we're looking at. Also, conditions of the runway itself. How icy is the runway? What are the friction coefficients of the runway? Our stopping capabilities in the various conditions.
Laura Einsettler, thank you very, very much for your time and your expertise. Joining us now, CBS News producer Ahmed Mukhtar, who is in transit to an upcoming press conference, we are told. What can you tell us?
We're in Toronto. We just landed. Our plane crashed It's upside down. Fire department's on site. Upside down.
Okay, all right. We are attempting to get our solid communications with our producer on the site. And again, we have been alerted that there is a press conference with some of the details we hope to become a little bit more clear about this episode at the Toronto International Airport, Pearson Airport in Toronto. When that press conference comes, if it's in this hour, I assure you we will get there. Nancy Cordes joins us now from West Palm Beach, Florida, covering the Trump White House. If we can pull that picture up so I can make sure that Nancy is there and available. There's Nancy. Okay. Things are a little bit up in the air. Nancy, can you hear me?
If you're talking to me, unfortunately, we have lost our ability to hear you. Okay. But we have been tracking all day long DOJ and the cuts that have been imposed across the federal government. For